Prologue. Possibilities. Lovell knew about possibilities, about losing them, and about finding them. He had once defined his life as a bet that had not paid off. One too many relationships and 10 times too many manual labor jobs had siphoned away his will. He had grown tired of searching for something that would make him happy. And for a time he had existed, nothing more. But one night his car had broken down, and he and his blonde mutt had been forced to walk 5 kilometers down a stretch of lonely, dark farm road. It had been then that he finally realized, that he couldn't live without being happy. He had looked forward and had looked back, and there had been only darkness. Then he had looked to the sky, and they had been there, and he had seen them as if for the first time. Stars, a perfect celestial field, neither fettered by clouds nor choked by light pollution. Lovell had laughed out loud, realizing how ridiculous he looked, standing in the middle of the road, staring slack-jawed into space. But when his laughter had subsided, he had turned and continued his walk. He had come to know for the first time in many years that a possibility had been before him. Now, 21 months later, he and his dog stood on alien soil. He wiped his sweaty palms on the hips of his rust-colored flight overalls, then resumed holding hands with Jax and the woman to his right. As the wind picked up, hinting of the scent of jasmine and causing the hair on the back of his neck to stand, Lovell let his gaze play over the 250 men, women, and children of the Vesta Colony Mission who had gathered to listen to Colonial Governor Borman. He glanced past the crowd to the thick jungle that stretched to horizon. Above the trees, where orange and mauve should have been, was a strange violet twilight superimposed by brilliant planetary rings that arced across the sky. A single full moon, ice blue, and not exactly round, hung low, but followed an ecliptic that took it much higher in the sky than Earth's satellite. For Lovell, Vesta was a place of eerie beauty, and it already felt like home.
"Incredible, isn't it?"
Jax observed. "Yes," he answered without looking at her. "Actually, I was seeing another night in my mind. I guess it's moments like this that make a person reminisce."
"Judging from what you told me back on the cutter, coming here is the smartest thing you've done in a long time."
He gazed on her and smiled. "Are you calling me stupid?" She returned a grin of her own, a very nice one.
"You know what I mean. We've all made mistakes."
"And what mistakes have you made?" he asked, then squeezed her hand. She squeezed back.
"True, I haven't said much, but we'll have time later."
She gestured with her head.
"Here comes the governor."
Lovell watched as Governor Borman strode to a position in the front of the group, turned to face everyone, then cleared his throat. If Borman was a day over 40, he didn't look it, and there was a glimmer in his eyes that spoke volumes of his determination. Lovell averted his gaze at the sound of a whimper from his dog. "What's the matter, Captain Crunch?"
"Captain Crunch?"
Jax asked incredulously.
"What kind of a name is that for—"
Lovell cut her off with a sigh. "It's a long story." He released his grip on Jax's hand, then patted the dog. The mutt wagged his tail and kept his attention focused on the sky. Jax took Lovell's hand in her own. "Tonight we stand beneath a new heaven," Borman began. "After 150 years of calling out, the silence of the universe assures us that life on Earth is unique. We are alone." There was something, lonely about Borman's words. Lovell wanted to believe that there was another race out there, a race that knew the secret to discovering and maintaining happiness, and could teach that incredible knowledge to humans. Admittedly, it was hard to argue against 150 years of silence, but that silence would not douse Lovell's hope. The governor shifted his weight, then cleared his throat once again. You and I are among the first to bring life to the stars, to this planet, the farthest any humans have ever ventured. Captain Crunch let out a bark. Many of the colonists looked to the mutt, and a few half grinned. Lovell felt his face warm with embarrassment.
He's barking because Foreman forgot to mention him,
Jax said softly. Lovell nudged the dog with his foot. The mutt turned around and sat on his hind legs, facing Lovell. Good, now you stay there and be quiet. He looked up into Borman's gaze. He mouthed, I'm sorry. Borman nodded slightly, then closed his eyes. The light that shines from this new sun will not touch our old home for another 16 years. The governor opened his eyes, then paused. Lovell considered Borman's words. He was 16 light years from home, standing on a planet in the Epsilon Eridani star system. Though the governor had just reminded him of that fact, it was still well nigh impossible to comprehend the distance. Unlike that light, we cannot go back. We can only move forward. The governor swallowed, then blinked hard several times, fighting back what had to be a surge of emotions. I know there are those back home who say we're only here as a status symbol. Others call us fortune hunters or say that we're running away. But I know we're here because of faith. A faith in each other, in a better world. Out of the corner of his eye, Lovell caught a tear sliding down Jax's cheek. Instead of turning to her, he allowed her the moment and kept his gaze on Borman. As he did so, he felt his own eyes grow moist. Borman continued, The rocket fuel that brought us here can be burned away, but the belief in ourselves, in one another, in the future, never can be, never will be. A man Lovell recognized as the pilot of the cutter stepped up to Borman and handed him a flagpole. The pilot resumed his position in the crowd. Borman paused a moment before lifting the flag, studying it with reverence. Then the governor stabbed the flagpole into the soil. A white flag with a blue earth in it unfurled in the Vestan wind. The colonists around Lovell took the flag's presence as their cue to let out a cheer. The woman to Lovell's left, a slim brunette who was probably in her 20s, pulled him toward her. Lovell released Jax's hand and found himself in an embrace with the girl. She hugged him hard, then thrust him backward, keeping her hands on his shoulders. Lovell saw that the name patch on her flight overalls read Tisha, Joan.
What a rush,
she said, then looked at his name patch.
Lovell, does that mean you have a will to love?
Immediately, Lovell knew that she was not one of the engineers responsible for designing the ship that had carried them to Vesta. I'm not sure.
Oh,
she said, her cheeks flushing. She let her hand slide off his shoulders.
Well, I bet you do. It's nice to meet you.
Lovell detected the weight of a hand at the base of his neck. He turned to see Jax move in next to him. She took his arm in hers, and suddenly Lovell felt nervous.
It's nice to meet you too, Tisha,
Jax said.
Now, if you'll excuse us.
Jax pulled Lovell away from the young woman and steered him through the dissipating crowd. Captain Crunch fell in at Lovell's side. I didn't know we were an us, Lovell said. Jax tossed her head to remove some golden locks that had strayed into one of her eyes, then lifted her brow.
You didn't?
He shook his head no. Does that mean we are?
Maybe,
she said, then started away.
Come on, let's get something to eat.
Lovell groaned. I hate it when they're coy. He regarded Captain Crunch. Don't you, boy? The mutt wagged his tail fiercely, licking his chops, then barked. For 2 Vestin months, the equivalent of 2.5 Earth months, Lovell helped build the settlement. The cutter's fuselage, an enormous structure which lay on its side in the clearing of the lush tropical rainforest they had chosen for their home, was utilized as a storage warehouse. Though in the years to come they would build permanent dwellings, for now they lived out of prefab Quonset huts, arrayed about the cutter like tin cans lying on their sides, half buried in the soil. Lovell participated in the raising of the satellite dish, a project that should have been accomplished in 1 day, but one that had taken the team of 5 nearly a week. Of the 16 rovers that had been packed for the journey, all but 1 was functional. There was something wrong with the transmission on the vehicle, a defect that had been present before loading. Lovell suggested they cannibalize the rover for spare parts. Borman agreed. Lovell shared nearly every meal with Jax. Though she was busy with her geological studies, she always found time for him. He knew they were destined to become lovers, but thus far he was the one holding back. What scared him was the fact that if their relationship didn't work out, there was nowhere to run. 1 planet, 1 settlement, and he knew he would hate the awkwardness of having to occasionally be in her presence. But he wanted her. Badly. After one particularly long day of serving on a construction team, Lovell skipped dinner, went back to his hut, and collapsed on his cot. He shared the hut with 15 other colonists, all of whom were, thankfully, away. He knew Jax would be upset with him, but he would make her understand. He dug his back deeper into the cot and closed his eyes. Then he felt Captain Crunch leap onto the bed. The dog used his muzzle to drive Lovell's legs to one side of the bed. "Oh, come on, dog, can't you sleep on the floor?" But the captain would do no such thing. He found a spot and settled down, resting his chin on one of Lovell's ankles. Sometime during the night, Lovell was awakened by a snarl from his mutt. He opened his eyes and focused on the clock at his bedside. It was 2 a.m., early even on a planet with 30-hour days. Lovell cocked and lifted his head a little, then squinted at the window. A wedge of blue moonlight shone into the room and split the floor in 2. The window's curtains, an old T-shirt hanging half off, billowed in the wind. Something rose behind the curtain. Something like steam or fog, but Lovell dismissed the image as a trick of his sleepy eyes. Captain Crunch rose shakily on the bed, then hopped off onto firm ground. Lovell sat up and rubbed his eyes on the heels of his hands. "What now, Captain?" The dog paused before the window, then uttered a steady, foreboding growl that rose slightly in pitch, but dramatically in volume. Reluctantly, Lovell threw off his covers, scratched at his belly button, then got out of bed. He crossed gingerly to the window, swearing under his breath that he didn't have a pair of slippers to insulate his feet from the icy floor of the hut. "This had better be important," he told the dog. Lovell rested an arm on the windowsill, looked right, then left, and saw no one outside the hut. He wasn't sure why, but he felt the impulse to look skyward. The tableau was peaceful, but then he saw something. He felt his mouth open. 3 horizontal slits of light, in formation, approached the settlement. First thought, we don't need any help. Why the hell did they send another team here? What the hell were they thinking? Second thought, they wouldn't send another team. Then he heard the thrusters of jets. It was a sound with attitude, an angry, malevolent sound that swelled and struck fear in Lovell. He detected something new in the air, a smell the likes of which he had never encountered. The closest thing he could compare to it was that of burning leaves. He studied the slits of light, probing deeper into his memory, trying to draw angles from them, insignia, something. And in his next heartbeat they were visible, a squadron of black triangular warplanes in a diamond attack formation. Lovell toyed with the idea that the planes were part of some top-secret military project, but at the same time that he tried to rationalize their presence, his heart told him they were not from Earth. The military would not spend that much money to put fighters this far out. The only people in the system were the colonists. From somewhere outside came a thunderous approach of footsteps. As he turned away from the window, Lovell's mouth went dry, and a knot formed in his stomach. Jax! Screams rose from the Quonset hut beside his. Lovell craned his neck, shot a look through a window, and saw colonists fleeing from the rear exit of the shelter. Above, a warplane swooped down, its engines howling, and let loose with a volley of laser fire that tore the hut into gleaming, sizzling ribbons of corrugated steel. Lovell's dog howled back at the roar of destruction. By now the other colonists were bolting from their cots, and Andrea, a biotech, rushed up to Lovell, her face a mask of fear and concern.
What's going on?
We're under attack? He said, the words sounding more like a question than a statement.
Oh my God.
Lovell spun away from Andrea and started for the door. Jax's hut was only 2 down from his. He could make it. A sound came from behind the door, a hissing, and Lovell froze. The door blasted off its hinges and slammed onto the floor. Through an acrid-smelling cloud of smoke, an immense silhouette appeared and advanced into the threshold. Other silhouettes became visible behind it. Then Lovell caught a glimpse of the thing. It was a flat, black and green creature, and because of the straight-lined patterns all over its body, Lovell assumed it was armored. Somewhat humanoid, it clenched in what could be called its hand the cylindrical device it had used on the door. Lovell's dog bounded for the alien shock trooper. Amid the screams of the colonists outside and inside the hut, Lovell heard his name. He looked over his shoulder and saw Jax standing in the rear doorway of the hut. He shot a glance forward and saw his dog prepare to leap onto the shock trooper. The alien raised its weapon. Lovell turned and ran toward the rear exit, but the other colonists clogged his path. The last things he heard were a yelp from his dog and the of the alien's weapon igniting. Jax was hurtled 5 meters away from the rear doorway by the shock trooper's weapon. She collapsed onto her side, felt a fire in her hip, brushed it off, then rolled and stood.
Lovell,
she said, her voice cracked and tremulous. Jax backed away from the hut, then in one fluid motion turned and sprinted away. She heard the demonic cry of an alien warplane, then laser fire paralleled both sides of her path. Dirt and stones shot into her legs from the barrage. She was between Quonset huts, and up ahead lay the relative safety of the jungle. A tremendous explosion sounded in the west. She looked right, just as the giant satellite dish exploded and toppled to the ground. Above it, alien warplanes swooped like metallic ravens over the treetops, flying in flocking formation. Hunting. From within the hut to her right came the hysterical voice of a colonist. "Mayday! Mayday! This is the—" A salvo of alien laser fire ended the man's message. Jax rounded the corner of the hut, and there, in the distance, she caught sight of the Earth flag, flapping defiantly against a wall of flames. A shock trooper ran by the flag, then swung around, aimed its weapon, and torched the emblem. Bastards! Jax felt a rush of air from behind her and came to a jarring halt. She looked over her shoulder and saw an alien warplane diving to zero in on her. The urge to duck passed instantly, for she knew that no matter what she did, the alien would not miss. Every nerve in her body thundered. For a moment, there was only the deafening thump of her heartbeat. Then the world became a place of intense heat and light. Space Above and Beyond. A novel by Peter Tellep. Chapter 1.
We are T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
Nathan West was strapped tightly into his launch seat. He listened to the steady, feminine voice of the mission commander through his helmet's comlink. It didn't matter that Nathan had heard her run through the checklist over a dozen times in the past. Each and every time, her voice made his adrenaline pump.
H2 tank pressurization.
Though wearing his flight suit, Nathan tried to scratch away the gooseflesh fanning across his left breast. He passed gloved fingers over the Tellus Colony mission emblem on the suit, but wasn't getting anywhere near his icy chest.
We are go.
The EFT commander announced.
T-minus 20. Auxiliary power unit start.
Go, the APU commander replied.
T-minus 15 seconds. Tellus, you have a go for auto-sequence start. Lock your visors and initiate O2 flow. 10.
Nathan pulled his clear helmet visor over his eyes. He engaged a knob on the helmet, allowing a gentle hiss of oxygen to flow. His heart raced, and he swore that if he were 55 instead of 22, his runaway pulse would be the end of him. He drew in a long, slow breath, then counted to himself along with the mission commander. 9, 8, 7... He turned his head slightly right and looked across the other colonists seated next to him. Their flight suits were, like his, centered with Earth flag patches, and to someone making a cursory glance, the colonists looked alike. That is, unless one focused on the faces. Among those faces, Nathan found Kylan. She beamed at him from behind her visor, then gave him a subtle thumbs up. Kylan Selena. She was 21 and the one for Nathan, period. Nathan's mother had always told him, "You'll know when you know." Nathan knew, and as he looked into the light in Kylan's eyes, a light that her visor could not contain, Nathan knew even more. 6, 5, 4, 3... He smiled and nodded to Kylan. An alarm buzzed.
Countdown hold. T-minus 3 seconds.
There were some things Nathan would rather have not heard while sitting atop a 45-story launch vehicle encircled by 10 solid rocket boosters. An emergency buzzer was number 1 on his list. But this one had been planned. He reached up and flipped down the double trio of toggles, and the cabin fell silent.
Tellus Colony, this is Mission Com. Simulated launch sequence complete. All systems are nominal. Reset for 9 hours, 4 minutes, and 12 seconds. You are go for launch.
Yes! Nathan's comlink reverberated with a cheer from the colonists. He shot a glance at Kylan. She flipped up her visor and blew him a kiss. As he and the rest of the colonists unstrapped themselves, Nathan knew that by now the techs already had the launch tower access arm in place and were in the white room unsealing the vehicle's hatch. Nathan fell in behind Drake, a doctor, and Kylan. Drake crawled into the tunnel of the hatch, then took the hand of a tech standing on the other side. As he passed out of view, the mission commander's voice echoed from a speaker.
Tellus colonists shall report to the launch vehicle by 2140 hours.
Kylan moved into the tunnel. Nathan smacked her butt. "Hey! Get in there, girl." While he waited for Kylan to exit, Nathan overheard a conversation in the White Room. "Vesta Colony never went this smoothly," Drake said. "They're still having problems. We lost communication with Vesta this morning," a Techer engineer answered. "Probably just solar flare interference again," another one chipped in. Kylan passed through the hatch. Then Nathan saw her turn and wait for him. He wiggled into the tube, and when he reached its end, he waved off a tech offering to help, and made it alone through the hatch. He emerged into the White Room, exhilarated. "Man, if I'm this pumped by a test launch, I won't need a rocket." Kylan grinned. Then her attention was directed to a wall clock, digitally running off the countdown. Nathan noted that Kylan's usually roseate cheeks had faded as completely as her grin.
"Final countdown," she said,
sounding a little scared. Nathan studied her a moment further, then nodded. "I know. Just think. Most people don't know if their dreams will ever come true. Our dream is definitely 8 hours and 59 minutes away." With that, Kylan's gaze ignited, and suddenly there was a trace of color back in her cheeks. Nathan moved in to kiss her, but the rims of their helmets kept them inches apart. Nathan laughed. He and Kylan had sacrificed a lot more than kisses to get where they were.
"Attention colonists, Osbury, Brown, Knuckles, Gonzalez, Palladino, Heim, Larley, Meneses, Vitaris, West, and Selena."
Nathan pulled back from Kylan. She looked as immediately concerned as he felt. The mission commander continued.
"Report to Governor Overmeyer's office immediately."
"Oh, God, we're too close for something to go wrong now,"
Kylan said, then sighed disgustedly. Though Nathan felt his stomach twisting and his heart jetting back to its runaway pace, he did his best to conceal his anxiety from her. "Gotta be a last-minute pep talk, that's all it is." Kylan squinted into a thought.
"I don't see what we all have in common. The names seem random. It's not like we're all in the same sub-team or anything."
"Stop worrying. Let's go." Nathan stood in Governor Overmeyer's sparsely furnished office, staring out the window at the Tellus Colony launch tower, a mighty scepter thrust into the dusk. A single metropolis of clouds floated over the tower, its underbelly stained a burning orange. Farther above the clouds, the stars were beginning to flicker on. Behind him, he listened to Kylan pace. Twice he had asked her to sit down.
"We're told to report immediately," she blurted into the silent room. "And then they make us wait 2 hours. The others didn't have to wait."
Nathan sighed long and hard. The first 5 minutes had been tense. After an hour, he had classified the wait as excruciating. By 90 minutes, he had searched the room for some sort of weapon to use on whomever had subjected them to the torture. But now that the 2-hour mark had been breached, there was only a sickening numbness.
"What do you think could be—"
Kylan's question was cut short by the opening of the door. Nathan turned from the window to see Colonial Governor Jonathan Overmeyer enter the room. He had grown to respect Overmeyer, a respect the governor had earned from every colonist. The man was strong and inspirational, and Overmeyer knew the 3 keys to successful leadership: to have a vision, to share it with others, and to execute it. The governor reminded Nathan of his father. Yet now Overmeyer did not look strong. He crossed to his large glass desk, and as he did so, his gaze never met Nathan's. "Good evening, sir. The launch simulation went perfectly," Nathan said. Overmeyer nodded absently. Nathan swallowed. "We are still a go." Without answering, Overmeyer slid his chair out from under his desk and sat. He set his elbows on the glass surface and steepled his fingers. Then, finally, he looked at both of them. "I know you are aware of the growing rights movement for in vitros, those conceived and born in artificial gestation tanks, artificial gestation chambers." Nathan subtly glanced at Kylan. Back in the White Room, she had looked as concerned as he felt. Now she appeared as stiff. "Is this regarding the rally we attended?" Nathan asked. Overmeyer pursed his lips, then said, "In a way. The rally has brought about a problem." Nathan took a step toward the governor's desk. "Sir, we have every right to support in vitros. We stand by what we did." The governor closed his eyes and paused. To Nathan, Overmeyer's silence meant the man was irritated, and Nathan felt his guard go up. Kylan took a step forward to join him.
"They are human beings, sir, just like us, only conceived from parents who never lived. farmed by the government as slaves to fight in the AI war after too many of us were killed. It's not their fault it didn't succeed. They are equal.
If anything, we owe them, Nathan added. A handful of heartbeats passed, and then Overmyer opened his eyes and lowered his hands to the desk. Last evening, the Tellus Board of Governors was issued a directive from the United States Senate. The launch will be scratched unless 10 in vitros are aboard. Nathan's stomach found a new home between his ankles. What? Given the restrictions on weight, rations, and personal capacity.
Are you saying we're being replaced? Kylan asked.
Overmyer averted his gaze. It is my sincere regret to inform you that one of you will not be on board.
Jesus!
Nathan tore away from the governor's desk. It was only now that the irony fully hit him.
I don't believe this.
He faced Overmyer. One of us? The governor raised his voice. 9 colonists have been released. Deciding factors include age, experience. Postpone the mission. If we don't go in 6 hours, the forecasted wormhole passage to Tellus won't open for another 12 years. Nathan beat his fist into his palm. They're not even trained. Send them on the next. The next colonial expedition won't be ready for 5 years. There are members of Congress who need to look good now.
We'll both resign, Kylan said, her tone suggesting that tears would follow.
Not going is not an option. You have a commitment to execute vital assignments on the mission, duties which one of you could cover, but for which no one else is trained, not to mention the severe legal consequences of breaking your contract. Nathan looked at Kylan. She looked as if there was a sea of glass in her eyes. They had made the commitment. How could only one of them keep it? I know both of you, Overmyer groped for words. It's your dream to go to space. Kylan sniffled and still fought desperately against her tears.
The dream was to go together.
Overmyer nodded slightly, and his expression grew sympathetic. I know of the intense feelings you have for each other. The fact you entered the program together with the intent of colonizing together, and ultimately both being accepted over 10,000 applicants, is a testament to your devotion. The governor raked fingers through his hair, then rubbed his nape. The world was so much simpler 20 years ago. I'm on record as saying this directive stinks. I fought it all the way and lost. I'll bet you would have fought it a little harder if your own ass was on the line. Off the record, Overmyer added, because of your situation, rather than issuing an order, I'm allowing the two of you to decide who will remain. Meeting Kylan's gaze was never more painful. Her lower lip trembled slightly. What was left of her composure hung on by unraveling threads. Nathan lowered his head and rubbed his eyelids. There is an alternative, Overmyer said. Nathan looked up. Your colonial certificates are immediately transferable for entrance into the Marine Corps Air and Space Cavalry. Kylan snickered in disbelief.
The military?
Nathan added his own question to hers. You call that an alternative? Maybe you haven't heard, but there's no longer a need for the military. We're beyond war. Yes, but there is a possibility the Marine Corps Space Cavalry may be assigned duty as colonial sentries. Kylan snickered again.
Possibility? You want us to bet our lives on a possibility?
Nathan wanted to know the answer to just one question. What do you do when the whole world drops out from under you? When everything you've worked for, everything that held time and place in your life, is ripped from your guts and thrown to the ground and stomped on, as if all of it really meant nothing, as if all of it was only a paper airplane in the rain. If there was an answer, Nathan considered strangling it out of Overmyer. He lifted an index finger, and took aim at the governor. "We did it the way you wanted. We followed the rules. These in vitros didn't train. These senators haven't sacrificed. Why should we pay for a mistake they made before we were even born? You're letting them throw away our lives. We believed in you." Overmeyer did not go on the defensive. He looked saddened by Nathan's outburst, and his expression woke a pang of guilt in Nathan. "I'm sorry you feel that way," the governor said. "All you can believe in now is each other." Kylan turned away from Overmeyer, crossed to the window, and bowed her head, still in control of her tears. As Nathan turned to go to her, Overmeyer stood. "Please, arrive at your decision by 21:30 today," the governor said, then headed for the door. Though Nathan was sure Overmeyer hadn't meant to do it, it sounded as if the governor had slammed the door behind him. Nathan put a hand on Kylan's shoulder. The room was a hollow, empty box, and he wanted to fill it with words that would mean something. He searched for something to say. Then he realized the search would take a lifetime. He slid in front of Kylan, closed his eyes, and embraced her. He felt a life-and-death intensity about the hug. After a moment, he opened his eyes and looked out at the rocket. Lights on the launch tower now twinkled like stars, and soon great spotlights would come on and bathe the vehicle so intensely in light that it would take on the sheen of a diamond. The billboard-sized digital clock posted near the observation stand read, "Launch countdown 06:02:29." He glanced at the rocket and began to lose his breath as he wondered which of them would be aboard in 6 hours. He would fight for Kylan to go, and she would, of course, try to convince him that he was much more passionate about colonizing than she. They could lie to each other as long as they liked. Nothing would change.